This week in the news, The Outer Worlds 2 sales numbers paint a grim picture, Marathon hits the top 10 sales a few hours after launch, Ubisoft decided to shit the bed, and more on this week's Old Man Rages at the News. Before we get this started, hit the like and subscribe buttons if you enjoy the content. And to start off the week, we're bringing up a blast from the past. Remember Relooted? Yeah, well, the activists didn't. Just look at the dislike to like ratio on this thing. The game doesn't even look like a good 2D platformer. Frankly, it just feels like an insult to the genre itself if we compare it to other games. They tried to make mechanics that, mind you, we had all the way back in the Flash games era that are quote-unquote revolutionary. And this clip.
Nearly there, Nomali.
Bad guys are coming. Go time.
Yeah, they called the police the supposed bad guys, even though they themselves commit crime. Can't believe I had to point that out. Can't wait for the 10th of February to come around so we can see how much they'll reloot on Steam. Moving on, CDPR issues a DMC notice against Cyberpunk 2077's VR mod. Oh boy, legal issues. Now, for some context, Blue Cross was making a VR mod for Cyberpunk 2077 and the demo for it was locked behind Patreon, aka there was a paywall. Because of that, he got a DMCA from CDPR, and who could have seen that coming? There is no commercial use for the user agreement that I can say with confidence he signed. Also, this is the extent of his maturity. Yeah, putting words in CDPR's mouth is insane, and I can't believe I'm siding with the corpo on this one. Oh boy, you know shit hit the fan when that happens. Now, the reason why I'm siding with CDPR this time around is because the VP of the company, Jan Rosen, if that's how you pronounce it, actually spoke about this. He confirmed that the DMCA strike actually did happen and also confirmed it violated the fan content guidelines. He did also let Luke know that the mod needs to be free with optional donations or to remove it, and remind people that making profit from their IP requires permission from the company. Luke did respond to Jan's tweet and believes that Jan is not within his right to demand that his software be free. He also wrote, and I quote, "It is not, quote, derivative work or, quote, fan content. It supports a large number of games which were built upon different engines, and it contains absolutely zero code or assets from your IP. Saying that it infringes on your IP rights is equivalent to maintaining, for example, that Riva Tuner violates game publisher's copyright because it intercepts the image the game is drawing on the screen and it processes them in order to overlay its statistics." In which the ex-mob community noted him reminding that Riva Tuner is free software that supports multiple games without needing a patch. And Here's Potato ratioed him by saying, "This makes no sense. What you are making are modifications to company-owned IPs. Your entire argument here is hinging on, quote, well, technically it's not a mod if I really stretch out the definition, end quote. Your Patreon and mod would literally not exist if it was just some software." Now, no matter what side you're on in this, it's just a lose-lose situation, let's be real. Why? Because we have people who lost access to the VR mod, and we have an entitled person who thinks they are owed money for using someone else's software. Frankly, the biggest L of all of this goes to the Cyberpunk community that lost out on what could have been the best VR mod for Cyberpunk. In other news, The Outer Worlds 2's sales numbers are not looking good. This came from Daniel Camillo, HeroNext, saying that the game sold less than 1 million units across all 3 platforms. He also compared it to the previous game that sold approximately 2 million units during the same time. He did also clarify in the replies that he understands that the game reached 1 million players after launch and that it was available on Game Pass. He used public available information to estimate that the game could not sell 1 million units. This wouldn't shock me because PlayTracker estimated that only 282,000 accounts own the game. Even if we look at PlayTracker, and there is a disclaimer here about how they calculate the estimations. Mind you, that's the numbers for Steam alone. Even if it's off by 50%, and let's say, I don't know, your platforms follow the same trend considering it's on Game Pass. And you don't need to worry about making money off of Game Pass, since that's not a sale. It's looking grim for the Outer Worlds too. And now, for a bad take. Journos are trying to cater to themselves again because one of VGC's journos asked to be able to remove profanity from games. Oh, talk about an entitlement. The reason behind this ask is the dumbest thing possible. You don't believe me? Hell, I'll quote it for you, especially before going into the article. I'm gonna need booze after this. Anyways, the quote goes as follows. In the era of excellent accessibility options, parents should be able to play certain games in front of their children without reaching for the volume. Yeah, he couldn't be bothered to either not play the game in the first place or put on some headphones. Talk about an amazing parent right off the gates. Oh, and he also apparently has a humiliation fetish because he reminded the audience that he enjoyed a Sweet Baby Inc. game. And yes, you all know which one this is. The one that you can auto-kill bosses in it. Not only that, but he played South of Midnight in front of his 7-year-old child. I feel bad for the kid, since having a parent that enjoys DI nonsense like South of Midnight is, gonna be an interesting way of growing up, I suppose. And to top it all off, I'll also quote this gem. And if a woman kicking arse in the background somehow rubbed off on her, all the better. Yep. This dude is willing to have his daughter become violent, but God forbid she hears someone say fuck or dicks or any other swear word. But the shit show doesn't stop there. He had the bright idea of showing examples where the game uses swear words in order to emphasize a point. Yes, examples. Multiple of them. Surprised? Me too. So, not only is he aware the game has swears in it, but he's willing to continue playing the game in front of his child. But now he wants an option to censor it because he can't be asked to be a good parent. Ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause to this guy, because I don't think South Park could have come up with this shit. This dude also had the guts to put this disclaimer in writing. In no way, shape, or form am I saying that these games should have their swearing removed, or that the content of the game should be compromised in any way for the people who want to play them unintended. Yeah, dude wants to stick to his guns, but be given the option to switch sides. There are so many jokes I can make here, but I'm not sure they'll be appropriate for YouTube. But you know what? Here's a pro tip for anyone out there. If you believe that this type of disclaimer is needed, then you shouldn't say or write anything that would require it. Simple as that. But sadly, the guy even further elaborates that he doesn't want to remove profanity from games like GTA 6 or Hellraiser, but for games like Starfield and Spider-Man 2, he believes the option should be there. If you also want to have a small laugh at his expense, just look at the quote tweets or even the replies to this tweet. You'll see the majority of people are roasting him. Now if you don't mind, waiter, I'll have a roast on social media, well done, thank you. And in more bad takes, GOG boss says we may get fewer games if regulators force devs to maintain them forever. You'll get points if you figure out where this is going. But anyways, the managing director for GOG spoke to Eurogamer on the 15th of January, saying that it's good to talk about game preservation once it happens, but it would get tricky when it comes to game design as online-only experience. I have so many things I want to say, but let's first hear this guy out. He specifically said, and I quote, "There is a broader discussion to be had with the industry of what does an end of life cycle look like in games. What is fair end of life cycle for a game? Should it be just burned and killed and no one can access it anymore, and people who spend 5 or 7 years working on it cannot really look at their creation anymore because the server is turned off? There is a very interesting and very complicated discussion that Stop Killing Games probably kickstarted out of frustration. My guy, it's not complicated. If the consumer bought a game 10 years ago, they should still be able to play the game with modern hardware. Granted, yes, that will be on the harder end to do with graphic drivers breaking the game occasionally, but this is the internet. One day some random crazy coder fueled by 10 shots of espresso and 2 hours of sleep could end up fixing it. You never know. Or another driver could come along and fix what broke originally. And he continued with, at the same time, if we put too many barriers on game creators and what the end of life cycle looks like, we might get fewer games because people will be scared of, okay, now we need to put up the funds to create it, promote it, and then upkeep it for 10 years, 20 years, because the regulator said so. I don't have the perfect answer yet, but it's good that the discussion is taking place. My brother in tech, the FAQ video for Stop Killing Games on Accused Farms channel answered your question already. Sure, there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, which is why they suggested, off the top of my head, like 3 different ways on how to handle this. God, if people actually read what was proposed in the first place, it would have been so much easier. Let's not forget Windows, despite all the shit that Microsoft does to it on a regular basis, also gives the ability to launch apps with backwards compatibility. The foundation is literally there. You all just need to grow a brain in order to use it. And all of this ironically comes from the storefront that tries to bring back old games to modern system. You know, it's in the name. Good old games. And don't get me started on live service games. Motherfucker, if you're making money from the game, gacha game doesn't really need to gatekeep any more content behind it. If it goes to end of life, give every account what they had, the ability to download the game unlocked with all of the content. You know, one way of doing it. Second, allow players to download an offline version, you know. MMOs, give an option to emulate locally. You know, might not be for everybody, but it's a way of preserving the game. Now, would I be up for one-shotting Illidan or fighting Illidan one-on-one in the Black Temple, Burning Crusade style after adjusting some stats for both the character and Illidan? Hell yeah, I would! Sounds fucking awesome! One-on-one grudge match versus Illidan. Oh boy, these guys have no imagination how to do this. Anyways, they also talked about their decision to pull Game Devotion, which is a horror game, mind you, from the store. I would go into what he said, but it's not worth it since it's just pure PR slop at its finest. The worst among this is that the game is still not available after multiple GOG employees said it's perfectly fine to put on the store. Yep, multiple GOG employees said that. Even Harris said he will strive to be clearer and more consistent, and yet he still didn't give a straight answer to why it's not there. Alright, maybe it's in another article he said why, but it's still just purely dodging responsibility at this point. In other news, Mindseye devs are still sponsoring streamers to play their game even though they had massive layoffs and single-digit players on Steam. Talk about priority. The unlucky guy in question is the streamer and YouTuber Kraken, who played the game last month to his Twitch audience and posted a video on his second channel, Kraken 2. Yeah, to no one's surprise, his fan base made fun of the game with comments like, "I can't believe this is real. Imagine getting a Concord sponsorship. This is history we're witnessing live right now." And, "Oh, I thought you were playing this because it's basically a meme at this point. I can't believe they're still sponsoring people." Yeah, you and me both, brother. At the very least, the video did manage to get some people playing it, cause it went from a peak of 14 players to a new record high of 35 on the 17th of January, mind you. Makes you wonder if they even have the money to pay for deals with the legal troubles they're in, or are they taking loans? We have no idea, to be honest with you. Moving on, Marathon managed to hit top 10 sellers within a few hours with its pre-purchase numbers. Impressive if only it lasted though. So, here you see one of the biggest jokes in games media, the gamer, cooming in its pants because Marathon beat games like Warframe and Where Winds Meet. Cool, it beat an arguably predatory game and Chinese Elden Ring. Big whoa, let's clap for it. If we go into global top sellers now, you won't find any trace of it. I had to go specifically to the US's top 1000 sellers to find it at the 61st spot. So, got me thinking, alright, let's go back previous week on global launch, mainly out of curiosity. And I found it at lucky number 99. Motherfucker, Overwatch 2 has better sales than that. And we have journals gushing about how it went to top 5. Wow. The worst offender of all of this is coming up with the game having a bundle that cost 170 euros. Yes, 170 euros. Without the game being included in the bundle. Now, if you want the bundle and a key for the game, you have to pay an additional 60 euros. So, it forces the deluxe edition on you. Ah, God, the greed is insane here for what looks like mediocrity. Now, normally I wouldn't talk about new releases, but there's an indie action RPG in the making called Knight's Path, and it did something that should have been done a while ago in the gaming industry. They ditched the modern agenda, and the usual suspects are screeching and crying about it. Hell yeah! Here you can see them introducing one of the NPCs you can romance, and another person replied to it with, I hope you have some LGBTQ representation in the game. What these now base devs replied with is, quote, we care about gaming and fun, not modern agendas. Alright, fuck it, I'm popping up a cold one for it. Cheers to you, mad lads. So, I know the internet, and I know what happens when someone talks like this. And you all know what most likely happened. So, I went to the quote retweets and yeah, people are losing their minds over there. You have this guy shoving words in the studio's mouth. To quote him exactly, claiming queer people existing as a modern day agenda is ironically pushing your own bigoted, biased agenda yourself. Considering we've got loads of documented historical events that queer people have always existed. What a fucking dumbass. Alright, let's break down this dumbass's tweet. First off, the studio didn't push any biased agenda. Second off, it doesn't matter if it's documented or not. They didn't want to make it in the first place, so they won't, I hope. It's not hard to understand that. Or so I'd like to say, but some people were never told no when they were kids apparently. Another example is this dude basically doing the same thing as the previous commenter. There are a lot more of these people, and frankly speaking, I find them an absolute laughingstock because they took offense to developers trying to make a fun game. Brother, keep in mind as well that the studio took a page out of CI Games' book and ran a poll on their X account asking their fans how the female characters should be represented. You can see the majority wanted natural beauty. Hell, even a good portion of them would be fine with average realistic. And I know the internet well enough that they got triggered by the revealed female character. Mind you, these are the people who won't buy the game even if the devs cave to their delusions. Moving on, Fable's evil landlord won't grow devil horns as their reboot ditches classic character morphing due to a lack of belief in object assholery. Yes, that's the actual title of the article. It's so stupid it had to feature in the story somehow. So, the Playground founder and general manager Ralph Fulton confirmed that your character's appearance won't change in line where their choices indicate their morality. Kind of a strange change to do, but oh well. And his response to it is piss poor. Feel free to judge it for yourself. It goes as follows. It's more about the subjectivity of morality that honestly we see in the world today. There's no objective good, there's no objective evil. You couldn't get anyone in the world to agree that something is evil or something is good. That just doesn't happen. That diversity of opinion, I think, is really clear these days. I can think of a few things off the top of my head that people would universally agree that it's good or evil. I mean, you could have come up with a better reason than this cop-out of an answer. Even the journalist here pointed out in the original game you can be a bastard who slaughters villagers for the fun of it. There should be a consequence of that, and growing horns is literally the perfect metaphor for that. That action is pure evil, and I'm pretty sure we can all agree on that one. On a funny note, they forgot to add manly animations, or whatever they understand as manly animations, to their male characters. Talk about a disaster of a game. Can't wait to see what state it launches in. And in what could be called a twist of fate, Epic's free giveaways cause a huge spike in Steam sales. Now, this is only one example, but the CEO of New Blood, Dave Oshry, revealed that the recent free giveaway on Epic Store resulted in his Eldritch FPS game Blood West to spike in sales on Steam. The thing is, this isn't like, quote, take with a grain of salt from this journal. He actually posted that on his X account. You can see he said the game sold 2000% more on Steam the day he posted Blood West for free on Epic. He even showed a chart. Not only that, but he bragged that Hyper Strange took all the money from Epic and are gonna make a DLC, so the CEO will just get more sales for doing absolutely nothing. Somebody paid attention to Gabe Newell and his strategy, I guess. Now, Baldur's Gate 3's publishing director pushed back on Epic Games CEO's better deal claim, saying Alan Wake 2 suffered by skipping Steam. Now, strap in, boys. It's a long one. Tim Sweeney here played as, quote, consumer first type CEO and said that consumers having choices is better. Sure, yeah, but then Michael Dose here went ham on the guy, starting a thread. He wrote, and I quote, I understand Epic entirely funded Alan Wake 2, but this altruistic pro-developer talk doesn't sit well when Remedy seemingly went into financial crisis because they couldn't tap Steam for Alan Wake 2 sales, suffering potentially hundreds of millions in lost revenue. Speaking facts, considering it took a long time for Alan Wake 2 to just get some bonus revenue. Hell, it took them until February last year to start making profit on it. And mind you, the game was released on 27th of October 2023. So, rough math here, but almost 2 years worth of wait before profit hits. Yikes. Now, the rest isn't that important, so pause if you want to read it. But Remedy now also responded to Michael Dow's saying, hi, there will be no Alan Wake 2 without Epic Publishing. The publishing deal with Epic was very fair to Remedy. While these complex deals can often take even a year to reach their conclusion and may not always be fair to the developer, this one was. And it only took months to get done. Epic Games was and is an excellent partner to us, Steam or no Steam. Reading this, I pictured an ostrich burying its head in the sand. Make of that what you will. But what I'm gonna say is, apply that picture. And underneath that, put the caption, not admitting to your own mistakes, to Remedy's statement. The worst part of all of this is that they didn't even consider that maybe, just maybe, some people aren't even willing to buy the game on Epic Games, thus leaving the consumers out of this. Hell, convenience is king at the end of the day, and if it's more convenient for people to have their game on Steam instead of opening, I don't know, a fifth third-party launcher just to play a game. But what do I know? Not only that, but Madame Savvy also roasted them by reminding them that not only did they lie to investors, but they also sold them on a story that is far from the truth. She also reminded the company how Firebreak is doing, and yeah, it ain't lit as the name implies. I'm pretty sure the fire extinguishers did their job there. I still can't believe there are companies out there that defend their terrible deals instead of thanking their clients for sticking with them even after failures. Oh, boy. And now to end this with a good old dumpster fire. The ex-Assassin's Creed boss is suing Ubisoft for nearly $1 million, alleging constructive dismissal. Oh boy, Ubisoft's in trouble now. Radio Canada reported that the lawsuit was filed in the Superior Court of Quebec, claiming $1.3 million in damages. The lawsuit argues that Mr. Coates' influence would have crumbled since the creation of Vantage Studios, which took charge of the Assassin's Creed series, and he got his orders directly from the CEO. Basically, he was made head of production who would answer to the head of the franchise. Coates wasn't considered for the head franchise role as it was based in France rather than Quebec, so he felt like his only opportunities were to either accept demotion or resignation. Radio Canada also reported that Coates considered this all unacceptable and constituted, quote, constructive dismissal. A lot of big words, I know, but it's legal stuff. Now, that isn't the only thing that's hitting them, because we have even more problems with Ubislop. They announced that the Prince of Persia remake is cancelled and there will be a major internal restriction. So, 6 games were cancelled. 1 is the Prince of Persia game, with 4 being unannounced projects and 1 being a mobile game. And they were cancelled as part of the major reset at Ubisoft's internal structures. I'll skip the CEO's speech because it's mid, like the company. The restructure is basically splitting off the genres into different studios, or as he calls them, creative houses. Vantage Studio will focus on Ubisoft flagships and trying to milk more money out of them, like, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six Siege, the things that were transferred already over to them. Creative Studio 2 is dedicated to their shooter experiences, aka The Division, Ghost Recon, and Splinter Cell. Creative Studio 3 is dedicated to something they should have dropped called Live Service Slop. The only good one of these examples is For Honor, and that in and of itself isn't that good as of recent. Creative Studio 4 will focus on fantasy worlds and narrative-driven universes like Anno, Might and Magic, Rayman, and Prince of Persia, with the final Creative Studio focusing on reclaiming positions in casual and family-friendly games. In other words, trying to compete with Craptendo, or Nintendo if you want to call it that way. And to be more specific on the Prince of Persia game, Ubisoft did say they would have required more time and investment than they could have responsibly committed. Even though, as IGN pointed out, it had half a decade of development. So, where did they spend all that time? Fuck if I know. But I want to see the timetables. What exactly they did for a half a decade. 5 years of development and nothing to show for? Please. If you want to read the statement, here it is. To be honest, it's just general PR statements, as per usual. Now, they did also turn back into boomers with the restructuring and canceled their remote work policy, and required employees to return to the office 5 days a week to, quote, improve efficiency. And to quote them, to support the effective implementation and operation of this new model, the group also intends to return to 5 days per week on site for all teams, complemented by annual allowance of working from home days. This evolution is intended to strengthen collaboration, including constant knowledge sharing and the collective dynamics across teams. In-person collaboration is a key enabler of collective efficiency, creativity, and success in a persistently more selective AAA market. Yeah, I'm not a fan of remote work, but I can see where that can be useful, and I wonder how that will go for their efficiency. The worst part of all of this is that they believe that generative AI is the future. Yep, the document described it as radically new value creation business mode. What the hell is this? A Power Rangers knockoff mode for Ubisoft? Jesus. And it's supposed to help them to become a more gamer-centric organization because of right-sized and more agile organization, apparently. Now, look, I ain't an English major, nor am I a native speaker, but something tells me all those words together do not work at all. Hell, just ask the tech industry how it's going for them with AI usage. And just to prove my point further on why all this does make sense, here's a quote straight from the document. The new operating model will further empower the execution of the group's strategy centered on open-world adventures and GaaS narrative experiences, supported by targeted investments, deeper specializations, and cutting-edge technology, including accelerated investments behind player-facing generative AI. I don't know how that's gonna happen, but I'll let them keep on dreaming. I mean, look at their stocks at this point. If people think they'll see Ubisoft going back to their glory days, they'll probably need a change of pillows. We can see the drool stains while they slept. Anyway, that's all for this week. You know the drill. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and more of it next week.